past several years, I have warned that there is a potential for a coming Second American Civil War. We don't know how it will take place, whether it will even come, but it does seem like we're at least on a path in that direction. Due to the various variables that exist before us, who knows? Who knows? But the reason why I bring this up, the reason why I talk about Civil War, I should say, is that, as most of you know, there have been articles written by prominent individuals at prominent publications about the fear of a second Civil War. National security experts, professors, and even former CIA analysts have all warned the U.S. is trending this way. As of right now, the state of political disarray, ideological division, and political violence has left us in what is called civil strife, the period that occurs before a civil war takes place. Now, it is no guarantee that a civil war happens. The civil rights era in the 50s was considered a period of civil strife, but it did not evolve into a full-blown war. However, Bleeding Kansas was civil strife, and it did lead to the American Civil War. Now, many of these people on the left, they have mocked me. They have said, this Tim Pool is laughable. Ha ha. Does he really think it's going to happen? And then they go on and gurgle their ignorance, saying he's just engagement farming. Well, oh boy, do I have vindication and news for you. Following the actions of Donald Trump in this past month, liberals across the board on various subreddits and other platforms, but I love the Reddit one, have been warning a civil war is coming, outright calling for the use of violence, or expressing their fear that there's going to be some degree of fascistic takeover, authoritarianism, ultimately culminating in conflict. Some have even advocated for civil war. Now, it's fascinating. If you go on these various subreddits, of which we have pulled up is Kyle Kulinski, you go on David Pakman show or Vaush. It's funny because you go back in time and they're, of course, commenting on Tim Pool saying, why does Tim Pool think a civil war is going to come? This guy's so dumb. MAGA chuds are so fat and overweight, they wouldn't be able to fight. And I find it hilarious because they've never once actually listened to what I had to say. So we have this post from Secular Talk pulled up. Secular Talk, of course, is Kyle Kulinski's show, where they say Donald Trump is the reason the Second Amendment was created. Really? I'd like to throw it back to the Culture War episode I did a few months ago with Sam Seder. Sam Seder of the Majority Report, of course, argued with me that civil war wouldn't happen. And for tribal cult-like reasons, he maintained a position that defied his own reasoning. And we had the discussion. Basically, no matter what I asked, the dude kept saying, well, I still don't think it will happen, despite saying he thought it could happen. But let me break that down, why this matters. So, of course, with liberals trying to insult me for tribal reasons, they say Tim Pool's crazy for thinking there could be a civil war. And there's a lot of factors at play as to why a civil war may happen. Right now, Donald Trump is firing bureaucrats. He's taking control of the independent agencies through executive order, which he should have had in the first place under Article 1 of the Constitution. And largely, the Democrats view this as a fascistic takeover and him placing loyalists. There's two disparate worldviews. It doesn't matter which view you take. My view is that, of course, Elon is firing bureaucrats, finding waste and bloat, and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are going to come and clean things up, restore accountability. Democrats view it as a fascist takeover. They fear they are going to be targeted by the federal government, and they say things like, this is how a civil war starts. So along comes Sam Seder. He comes on the Culture War show, and he says he doesn't think there will be one, and tries to play this thing of, oh, Tim Pool is so dumb for saying civil war. So I said to him, okay, do you think that Donald Trump is going to use the military to deport illegal immigrants? And Sam Seder says, of course. He said it. Right. I said, okay, let's imagine a scenario where Donald Trump has trucks and trains pulling up and they're loading illegal immigrants, these people, onto trains by the thousands. Do you think that liberals will just stand there and say, oh, I guess, And he largely agreed, yeah, liberals won't do anything about it. They'll sit there and watch. And I said, sure. Do you think that there is a possibility that as these deportations are happening and Trump has started taking control, a state like California may refuse the military or National Guard to come in and do this? Of course. And I said, do you think Trump will just say, okay, I guess we can't go to California? And he says something to the effect of like, no. The logic and the questions I asked was not to get Sam Seder, but largely, I believe people like he and Kyle Kulinski and David Pakman just say whatever their followers want them to say. And so that is, Tim Pool is so dumb. I'll give you an example on David Pakman. David Pakman had on, this is my favorite example, and I'll give you another one, to be completely honest. I'll give you the modern one right now. Donald Trump is enjoying the highest approval ratings of his political career. Though it has gone down a little bit over the past couple of weeks, it was at a really high point, and now he's just generally like 1.5 up. So pretty good. Best of his political career. David Pakman put out a video saying worst approval, all-time worst approval or something. I'll show you the screenshot. How can David Pakman logically put out a video saying Trump has the worst approval ratings when it's the best he's ever had of his career in aggregate? Because he's just saying whatever he has to say. Now me, I use aggregate polling. I don't isolate one poll. So here's a couple of examples. Several years ago, this is probably like 6-7 years ago, I noticed that David Pakman and I both had two different videos on the same day. Mine was Trump sees highest favorability. His was Trump sees lowest favorability. I said, well, hold on. Something must be wrong. Did I get this wrong? How can these two realities coexist? In my video, I took the aggregate favorability and approval of Donald Trump, meaning I looked at 15 different polls, averaged them out using Real Clear Politics and 538, which is ABC News. And we found that though Trump was underwater, it's the best he had ever done. And I said, this is great news. Trump is improving. David Pakman took a single poll showing record unfavorability and said that proves it. It's very strange. Why would you lead off with what is statistically known as static or a blip? That's why I didn't use it, and I never do, because these polls are outliers. Sometimes I'll use single polls if it is the only poll put out for that time of a specific issue. Notably, we talked about Democrat favorability recently being at an all-time low. And I showed that while it is lower than Republicans in aggregate, there are these single polls saying all-time low. I think that's fine. But tracking Donald Trump's approval rating in this way, that's not true. And then there's the famous meet the press moment where David Pakman laughed when it was Ted Cruz asked if he believed the Ukraine interfered in the election in 2016, to which Politico and the New York Times reported. And when Ted Cruz says that's what's been reported, a producer laughed and Pakman laughed at him. This is a really great example. This is Pakman laughing at a guy for reading the news. Here's my point, and we'll jump into all of this. Kyle Kulinski is getting roasted because he kept saying Kamala was doing really well and owning the Republicans, and he actually thought she'd win Iowa. Insane. David Pakman, as I already mentioned. And now we have, of course, the Vaush subreddit, Vaush, where they mock me for all the times I've warned that extreme politicization of government could lead to civil war. Not that I was saying the left was starting a civil war or the right was. I said this political division is getting to the point. Case in point, let's jump here to this post. Let's zoom in at least a little bit. Secular Talk, 17 days ago. Donald Trump is the reason the Second Amendment was created. As a libertarian socialist, now more than ever, I believe it is crucial for leftists, liberals, unions, immigrants, LGBTQ, and POC to finally stop trying to play the moral high ground in the issue of Second Amendment and level the playing field with who has the guns in this country. In a comment posted 17 days ago, it says, I wouldn't be surprised if a civil war happened in the next 6 months. Interesting. Well, my friends, I have a litany of posts. Here's one from r/politics. The second U.S. Civil War is coming. It's been coming for some time. And this is in response to an article from 10 hours ago. Blue states fear invasion by red state National Guard troops for deportations. Washington state Democrats back a bill to keep other states' units out. Let's roll, baby. For the David Pakman Show 7 months ago, MAGA keeps hinting at a civil war. How would that play out? MAGA has no actual army, so I guess it would just be some armed and crazed Trump fanboys, just like a bunch of Kyle Rittenhouses running amok. How would they do against the actual U.S. military? I'm showing you this because this was the sentiment from the David Pakman subreddit 7 months ago, before Donald Trump won. The perception was, we have the military. What could you possibly do? Someone commented a big fat L, just like last time. Extra fat. They won't fight because McDonald's and Burger King would stop serving them. The South shall fall again. Very funny. So here's my good friend ChatGPT. Let's start here. Does working out make men more conservative? Yes, studies suggest that men who engage in regular strength training or fitness activities tend to have more conservative political beliefs, blah, blah. Give me a graph showing the level of physical fitness compared to political ideology. And this is not the amount, it's the relationship between. That is, the further left you go, the less physically active a person is, and the further right you go, the more likely you will find physically active people. That's just simple. And look, it's very simple. Here's a graph illustrating the relationship between physical fitness levels and political ideology. As fitness levels increase, the trends suggest a shift towards more conservative beliefs. That is to say, there are more fat conservatives and more fit conservatives. There are more average liberals, and that's all that matters. The left likes to point out that conservatives tend to be more overweight, but they overlook the fact that conservatives have the highest and lowest end. Conservatives have very fat people and very fit people, and liberals are somewhere in between. Meaning, if it came to conflict, you have substantially more well-armed individuals, fat or otherwise, and more fit individuals who likely would do fighting. And then here's, of course, the obvious gun ownership rate by political ideology, which is a straight line from 0 to 100. Yep, the further left you go, the less likely they are to have guns. So let's get back to the comments. Here's late-stage capitalism. Why the United States doesn't go to a civil war? Late-stage capitalism has nearly 1 million members on Reddit, and there are many posts, this one's kind of low-hanging fruit, to be honest, from these far leftists who say record high homeless, insecurity in the working class, historical rate of insecurity, the wealth is hoarded by 1%, violation of human rights, media-controlled narrative. Why are they supporting the system? Now, to be fair, late-stage capitalism wasn't one of those subreddits insulting me over the idea. They were probably the leftists hanging back being like, Tim Pool ain't wrong. Let's go back to the David Pakman show. Dear America, you do not have to let him do it from Canada. And this is really funny. Here's a little cat with hearts. It says, America is letting him grab him by the pussy. And then on the right is a beaver. And it says, Canada is different. Stay the F away from our beavers. Okay. The top comment from 1 day ago, David Pakman. Y'all have to understand this is the closest to what it must have felt like during the Civil War. I live in a red state and they believe everything Trump tells them. Blah, blah, blah. Trump is doing everything the opposite of a president should, blah, blah, blah. I show you this one because these are the people that mocked me when I literally described this phenomenon. Not that I said we should have a civil war. We don't want one. We want peace. But you see, these people lie, cheat, and steal. And as such, you end up with people who only ever know current thing. That's it. So why now, a day ago, they're like, this is what civil war must have felt like. But a year ago, when I was like, guys, everything we are seeing tracks historically along so many other civil wars. Just do your basic research on it. To the point where even Sam Cedar was ultimately like, well, I suppose it could happen, but I don't think it will. And I'm like, sure, I agree. I don't think it will either, but we are on track. That means the path we are going, should it continue to escalate, goes in that direction. We could turn right at any point, right? Hey, we got another one from the David Pakman show. How are y'all preparing for the very possible Trump recession? You know, blah, blah, blah. They say we're planning on selling our home and keeping the equity safe. I'm planning on things going to ish over the next few years and will likely last a decade as people leave the MAGA cult. Finally, if it really hits the fan and civil war starts, California will probably be one of the better states to reside in a potential war. Really? You're moving and packing 2 months ago out of fear of a civil war? Wow, these people are crazy. One person wrote in the David Pakman subreddit, I am executing the Doge purge. Here's what I want you to know. The top comment, a Luigi in every household. They won't stop until they lose full-blown civil war. Really. I have some polls I want to show you. I wrote that I'm seeing more and more liberals calling for taking things into their own hands, notably from the David Pakman subreddit. One person says it's done. He's got full control of the government, military, and all. It's either the people take it into their own hands out on the streets, or it's going to be a fascist state from now on. Very interesting. Here's one where I said, guys, liberals think a civil war is coming. Can you believe it? Yeah. Someone says, how does the Trump presidency, monarchy, dictatorship end? And someone said, a good guy with a gun. Terrifying. These people should be investigated. It ends in war. One person says it's coming to a head. And here's my favorite, as I mentioned. Here's the David Pakman subreddit. All-time lowest approval rating. Trump worst February approval of all time. Disaster already. Guys, Real Clear Politics, this is important context, okay? Real Clear Politics and 538 have Trump in aggregate across all polls above water. It's the best he's ever done in his career. It has been going down. Disapproval has been going up, as to be expected. But even if Trump sits a point below, the entirety of his first term, he was like 10 points underwater, at some point 12 points underwater. Right now, he's above water with super high approval ratings. Again, it may go down. Why is David Pakman posting thumbnails all-time lowest approval rating? Because, for the love of all that is holy, it's all fake. Pakman, Kulinski, all of these people do all day is lie. Yo, I'll show you. I don't care. I don't care if Trump is right or wrong, okay? I prefer it because I live in reality. But let me just stress this one more time. As I have been, let me see if I can find this stupid post from Vosh's subreddit 2 years ago. So does Tim Pool tweet about civil war just to get engagement, or does he actually fantasize it, or both? And they show a whole bunch of posts from me over the past couple of years where I said, you were in a civil war, whatever. Now, they remove the context from these things, but most of these posts are in response to something happening at the federal level, which was shocking and resulting in people on the right calling for escalation or demanding accountability or some kind of action. That is, they don't show you, but quite literally, here's one. This and the Obamagate stuff tell me we aren't in a civil war. This is from 2020. No one views the upcoming election as legitimate. That was in September of 2020. I was completely 100% correct around the sentiment around 2020. Shout out to my friend Ryan Long. I'm going to call you out on this one, buddy, but in a good way. Ryan Long came on the show back then. I talked about the fear that we were escalating towards civil war, despite the fact Trump was president and we had an election coming up. After the election and Trump lost, this is a few months in, Ryan Long on Timcast IRL, as soon as the show started, says, where's the civil war, man? You were telling me that we were heading towards civil war, and I was all freaked out. And now what's going on? And I immediately just said, on January 6, 2021, 1,000 Trump supporters fought their way into the Capitol building, fighting with cops in an attempt to stop the electoral vote count. Should I continue? Like, do you get my point? And he went, oh, my point was this. In 2020, I said, nobody views the election as legitimate. And I was right. You got January 6th. And the left said it was an insurrection. So I'm not saying January 6th is this, that, or otherwise. The feds then went after peaceful people who weren't involved in the riot, hunting them down to the point where a little old lady in Alaska, for mistaken identity, had her home raided. Insane. They set up Capitol Police Departments in different states. Why? COVID lockdowns? So in 2020, when I said, holy crap, now these people seem to think we live in a world where tomorrow the Civil War just happens. And the whole time, as all of you know, I've been maintaining this is a track towards. January 6th, the left called an insurrection. They literally claimed that Trump tried to start a civil war on January 6th. Yet, even after that, for the love of all that is holy, they mocked me for entertaining their own ideas. Now, what I tell you right now, with all these far left lunatics advocating for civil war, look at this one. Blue states fear an invasion, civil war. Interestingly, the union, blah, blah, blah. All of these people, by the time this happens, will be in a full-blown civil war. Oh no, Vosh subreddit. Hold on there a minute. Weren't y'all in the Vosh subreddit just claiming a couple of years ago that I was just engagement farming? That's what they were claiming. And now they're posting civil war will happen. It's fascinating. Here's one from the Vosh subreddit 3 days ago. David Pakman revealed he had a conversation with some lawyers in D.C. who warned him there is serious talk about going after progressive independent content creators. Well, I certainly think David Pakman is a bad person. He's allowed to say what he wants, despite the fact I can prove he's lying. Now, don't get me wrong. In those videos he makes, he's clickbaiting. He talks about Trump's approval being well, but he leads off by convincing people it's bad. And that's fine. He's allowed to. He's allowed to do that. That's the First Amendment. He's a liar, and I will call him a liar. But where we are right now is my warning to all of you where this ends up and where it escalates to. And the left is now calling for, advocating for civil war to the point where Kyle Kulinski's subreddit 2 weeks ago said Trump is the reason for the Second Amendment. And someone responded, I wouldn't be surprised if a civil war happened in the next 6 months. Now, I don't know. Honestly, I think Donald Trump is waging a march to the sea, as it were, on the deep state. With Dan Bongino being appointed, I'm not so convinced anymore. I think the administrative civil war may be over. But this could be the path by which things ignite. That is, Abraham Lincoln won his election in 1860. Before he took office, 7 states seceded from the Union. It's a very different structure of governance. Most civil wars are not secessions. Most civil wars are urban areas rejecting the rural areas' ideology. So leadership of the country, like if you look at Spain, for instance, the cities went one way, the rural areas went another. And when the military took over, or I should say the government started to shift towards in one direction, the cities rejected it. The possibility of a civil war will likely not be secession, will likely be Donald Trump deportations, as I mentioned before, and Democrats refusing, federal law enforcement moving in, and no one ever sees it coming. We say, and I know you know this because I say it a million times, but this one goes out to all the lefties who may find themselves watching this video because now all of a sudden they're scared of civil war or calling for it. The U.S. Civil War started at the Battle of Fort Sumter when Union forces had a military base in South Carolina, said, you can't stay here. We have seceded. And they said, it's our base. We built it. Do something about it. Only one person died, and it was an accident. Even after the Battle of Fort Sumter happened, no one believed we were in civil war. When Confederate troops made their way to Manassas, to the first Battle of Bull Run, to confront Union forces, people were picnicking on a hillside. They were picnicking saying, there's no civil war. Now, hold on. Historically, we say the Civil War already started, but there were people picnicking thinking it could never happen. How does that make sense? Because in the moment, people can't see what comes next. Historically, we say what led to all of this, the first shots were Fort Sumter. Now, to be fair, we could say Bleeding Kansas was beginning of the Civil War. For 7 years, people were murdering each other in Kansas over whether it would be a slave territory or a free state. And then you get the secession before Lincoln was even president. So now, what do we have? We don't know exactly what will happen, but the pieces have been lined up as such. It is very dangerous. With Donald Trump taking these actions, it may be very simple. Let me show you the article that prompted all this. Blue states fear invasion by red state National Guard troops. Donald Trump says, we are going to deport in California. California says, absolutely not. We will defy you. Trump says, I hereby invoke the Insurrection Act, which can be invoked if a state has stopped enforcing the law. Trump then nationalizes the California National Guard, causing a split where some more conservative Californians agree and others say, I live here, man. I'm not going to go against my state government, despite the fact we're more of a federal society than we were at the time of the Civil War, which was more state-based. Civil War, in fact, shifted that. Many of the troops may say yes to Trump, but then they're going to be at odds with their local law enforcement and community who will not. It could be that simple. You end up with National Guard coalitions from other states going into California and occupying the state. Democrats then say, my God, it's happened. The fascists have taken over. They have taken over our government. They have ended democracy. The question is, will the far left stop? It may begin with far left insurgency. They go around acting a fool. Who knows? It could be that Trump backs off, refuses to engage in the deportations, but then you see rogue right-wing actors say, we are going to shut down highways into California, causing this strain. Trump then says they're in defiance of the law. Who knows? Now, a year ago, 2 years ago, during the Biden administration, I'd say the fears at the time were what the right would do in reaction to a weaponized federal government used by the left. Now it's inverted because Trump won and we didn't know what was going to happen. The left, of course, is now saying civil war. The funny thing, people on the right haven't stopped. People on the right are still saying Trump won the election, but the fears of civil war haven't abated because we're still terrified of what the far left extremists will do. So, my friends, I will wrap it here because I don't want to go too long. But isn't it fascinating to see all these far leftists now advocating for, calling for, or warning of a civil war, despite the fact they mocked me and everybody else when we were reasonably saying, guys, these escalations are happening and we don't want them. Funny, isn't it? I want to make sure I wrap up by giving a good shout out to Kyle and David for being wrong and lying all the time. Now, I'm wrong all the time, too. So, stones and glass houses, but I won't lie to you like David Pakman does. Worst approval? This dude is awful. And you know what? YouTube props him up and people eat it up like the good little cultists they are. Let me tell you this. He had a video apparently where he accused me of saying he was getting funded by USAID or something. Milo Yiannopoulos on the show. And I said, we should look at some of these podcasts because USAID was paying nonprofits. And we know many nonprofits buy advertisements on these podcasts. So we should take a look at that. Some people got mad at me and said, Tim, but you're getting money from Russia. Or whatever. I never got any money from Russia. That was always a lie. We did a deal with a conservative company based in Tennessee with a prominent conservative personality. We did our background checks on their investors and everything. And it turns out we were manipulated. But the money came from American companies. And it's never been proven. That's what's really fascinating. Hopefully, we'll see something from Dan and Cash on the matter. That being said, I am not, and I did not say this to impugn the honor or integrity of David Pakman, to imply that he did anything untoward. Milo Yiannopoulos did. But David lies because he wants to put my name in a title. My point was, David may be unaware, as many of these other podcasts are, that the ads they're selling are coming from government contracts. And we may see those contracts disappear, which would be interesting. I suppose we'll see. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this segment. We've got more coming. Stay tuned. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know, and we'll see you all in the next segment.